Welcome back to the Leça Chess Open 2026. We are picking up on round 5 after a very decent start, winning above and then drawing some games. And in round 5, I got paired against Grandmaster from Cuba, Lelis Martinez-Duani, who is, a strong Grandmaster, and we've faced each other like a bunch of times. He plays around Portugal and Spain a lot, and usually our direct encounters end in a draw. But I was really trying to get something going in this game, so I decided to go for this line in the accelerated dragon with knight takes c6. This is quite fashionable nowadays. Pawn takes e5. Black has to go knight g8. You might find this very odd if you're, kind of more of a beginner player, or maybe you're not too familiarized with the theory, in this particular opening. But yeah, the thing is that the pawn on e5 is also a bit overextended, and black has his trumps. So I was expecting this, but he took the pawn. And funny enough, I've gone for this position, I went for this position twice, and both times they took like this. And basically this just leads to a completely, tasteless endgame for black, where you're against a strong player, you're pretty much just trying to draw the whole game and don't have many winning chances. But okay, my opponent probably thought, you know, probably found it best to avoid some preparation or something. And he goes knight d7. I believe king e8 is a bit more common. I'm not sure. Knight d7. Okay, here I thought for a bit and decided to go f4. A bit of an aggressive move. So in some sense, f3 is more natural. But okay, of course, white is slightly better in this position because my pieces are a bit better, the king is better, and so on. But sometimes it's hard to generate play. For example, if you try and create a break with h4, h5, that just gets met with h5 from black. So sometimes, you know, you have a good position, but you cannot just sit and wait. You have to do something. So I went f4, a bit more aggressive. And here he surprised me a lot by trading on c3. So of course this damages my pawn structure, but the bishop pair is very valuable in this position. It's really valuable. And so white just has a very comfortable, easy flowing advantage here. Okay, king e8, bishop d3. I believe I played well here because I guess bishop c4 or bishop e2 are more natural looking moves, um, because somehow they keep more immediate activity, let's say. But what I thought is that I want to keep the bishop defending the pawn because of some concrete things. Okay, this move b6 was a bit weird, but he was playing rather fast. So now this allows me to go e5. So I concede some white squares, but bishop e4 will be quite annoying and force him to get pinned like this with bishop b7. So first rook d2, then bishop e4. And at this point, you can see white's position is stuff you only dream about, basically. White has a big advantage. But at this point, I let it slip a bit, um, because I missed something, or maybe I got a bit too excited with my position. What I should have done, well, what I did is I went a4, quite natural, just generating play with a5. But as we'll see, this allows black to get enough time to coordinate his pieces. What I should have done is try and improve my structure by either playing rook d3 or rook d4. For example, rook d3. He cannot kick the rook away because the pawn is dropping. And next up, I'm just doubling up the rooks. And so the best thing for him to do is to take. I doubt he would do that, but I guess it's what the computer says. But this just allows me, this massively benefits me. And at this point, I have an even bigger and easier advantage. So I should have done that. I went for a4 because I'm not sure I missed this plan of his, or I'm not sure what happened, but this is quite strong. And now after a5, he just goes king c7, and I cannot I can add more pressure, but I cannot break his construction here. And sometimes, if need be, he might consider even knight c5. So at this point, I don't really have anything. So instead, I went rook f1. I was still hoping that this would lead somewhere, Now the point is if king c7, I am breaking up my structure with f5, but I'm also creating problems for him. And I haven't checked it with the engine, but this might be very strong for me. Yeah, computer gives a slight advantage. So he went bishop a6, rook a1. Here I missed something again, but this is not a bad move. Maybe in hindsight, bishop d3 would have been a better try, because again, I will fix my structure, even though the computer just says this is a draw. I feel like because of the space advantage and the healthy pawn structure, white can pose some problems. I went rook a1 instead, and basically I missed something very basic here, unfortunately. I just missed that he can just retreat with the bishop, because all of a sudden, he is in some sort of, he could be in some sort of danger. For example, if he puts the bishop on this diagonal, I will trade and infiltrate with the rook. But bishop b7 is kind of obvious. I kind of just missed that. And at this point, I decided to go for this setup with the king on e3. And I was sort of envisioning this endgame where, I still thought I had chances here. And it's remarkable that he was playing super fast, super quickly, because I feel like it's not obvious that that black is doing fine at all. Because my pieces are all more active than his, bishop is better than the knight, and so on and so forth. But he does have the idea of going f5, and then simply he runs out of weaknesses, so to speak, and he can go like rook e8, rook e4. So the game finished rather quickly. g4, h4, king d3, and he went for this repetition. I was mostly considering f5, but this, of course, can be dangerous for him with my rook infiltrating. I was trying to calculate some lines like this, maybe knight f8, or, taking, I thought, was genuinely dangerous with the potential of this pawn linking up with the rook. But instead, he just went for this repetition, and I have no way to avoid it, I felt, because of king f3, f5. Now this is a worse version of events for me, because he's just taking on c4. So, yeah, let's go on to the next game. Next game I was playing black. Again, this was a double round, and all of a sudden I was playing consistently like 2400s, and I got paired with an 1800 player. So not ideal, but that's an open tournament for you. And yeah, I didn't prepare anything. I decided to go for the Scandinavian. Um, and this completely, crappy line with c6. I can't remember my stuff properly, but I'm pretty sure bishop g4 followed by knight c6 is the way. But I couldn't remember the details. They were a bit hazy, so I decided to just get a worse position and try and outplay him. That was basically my thought process. Okay, knight a6, knight c7, just covering the square in front of his majority, let's say. Rook d1, knight e4. Okay, I'm down in space. I want to trade some minor pieces. And I give up the bishop for the knight as well. I wasn't really liking the looks of the bishop on f5. And if he just goes knight e5 or something, I was always scared that he would just start pushing all his pawns on the king side. Even though I guess it would make more sense for this rook to be on f1, but still, this bishop is just a bad piece. So instead I traded and tried to keep it steady. Now around this point, I was very much optimistic and playing quicker, because the problem with these positions in general for white is that if you can't really push the pawn and open up the board for the bishops, usually this will just remain a weakness forever, and black can just double and triple and trade queens and keep pouncing on the pawn. So that was my game plan. That's what I was doing for a while. But unfortunately here I missed an important detail. So I had seen this maneuver from him. But what I missed, by the way, he's threatening queen a3, winning the queen on the spot. What I missed is that after bishop a3, I wanted to go queen b8, but he has this tactic with bishop c6. And this can only spell trouble for me. Let's say rook d4, like he trades everything or something. And like the knight is completely misplaced, and his bishop pair just opened up to a whole new life. So I have to go queen c7, and I mean, I was seeing this go the wrong way in many different ways. For example, he can trade, and the point is a bit concrete, as most things in chess. Like, if I take with the knight, he can go bishop c5, and this is really annoying. This is extremely annoying. Bishop c5. I can't really defend the pawn properly. If I go b6, he gives up the two pieces for the rook, and this position ought to be winning, I thought. Yeah, and the computer agrees. So, so if I had to take with the knight, with the rook, well, he can probably just push d5 and simplify everything towards a draw. But he went back. This was actually a very interesting idea as well, I have to say. I hadn't even considered this, but he's taking advantage that my pieces are misplaced. And if I take the pawn, he wants to sacrifice the bishop. And he should get a draw here. He probably also doesn't get more than that, but he should get a draw with, let's say, queen g7 and like queen e8. He always had this draw in the pocket, this and take with check. The bishop nicely controls, covers this square in f8. So, for example, king takes queen h6, queen f7. Actually, I missed that in these positions, he cannot take here on pain of queen takes g3. I kind of missed that, but okay, he can just do this perpetual. Okay, instead I went rook e8, a slight detour in my plans, but that's fine. He traded and went for d5, which was mostly concerning me because he's trying to force matters towards a draw. And here I genuinely thought, after I sunk deep into thought, I thought that we were just going to make a draw after I traded in knight c7. And I will explain why briefly. But here, this was probably the most interesting position of the game. I have an immense amount of tries and problems that I can pose to him, but I wasn't exactly seeing how any of them could pan out in advantage, let's say. Probably the thing that I considered the most here was bishop c3. And here I saw a really beautiful line that I want to show with you, that I want to share with you. Rook d3, bishop b4. And now the problem is that, number one, he cannot take because I'm taking and attacking the rook and the pawn, and I will just collect the pawn next. And now I'm just up a healthy pawn, maybe take with the knight, and I'm just up a healthy pawn. That's all I've ever dreamed about. If he cannot retreat with the bishop because of knight c5, and again I'm creating lots of problems for him. Eventually, I spotted that since the rook is already on d3 and it's on a protected square, he can go d takes c6, forcing me to trade the rooks here first. And here it still looks like I'm going to win a piece. And the idea that I wanted to show you is that after bishop a3, white has a saving move. Only one, but enough saving resource. And it's really pretty. So if you want to give it a try, you can pause the video here. But the move is c4 to c5. Absolutely beautiful in my humble opinion. It's such a, I don't know, innocuous looking move. But the point is that he just wants to get rid of the knight and then promote. So I don't have time to just stay up a piece. If I take with the knight, it's the same thing. So I would have to, for example, take on c6 and then take on c5, and we're just making a completely elementary draw here with the opposite colored bishops. So after I was riddling my head around all these details with bishop c3, or take first and then bishop c3, or take with this one, and so on, I went for takes and knight c7. which I had basically which I had basically figured out that this was a draw. But well, what can you do? I couldn't see anything else to do. And this was the easiest draw here was with bishop c5. So now the main point is that if I take on d5, I'm not actually threatening to take the bishop because of this pin. So he can just take on a7. The the reason why he probably rejected this is that b6 looks really appealing and just good for black. But it's not. And there's a big problem, which is this intermediate move d6. Extremely strong. The point of white's play is that we entice the pawn to b6 so that then we soften up the c6 pawn. I cannot take because he takes on c7 and he's promoting all of a sudden. If I remove the knight, let's say to e8, he goes bishop e3, and here white is even marginally better, or maybe much better in practice. I'm not sure which one is more true. Instead, he goes for this bishop e7. I mean, I just got lucky here. And he told me after the game that ever since the queen exchange, he thought he was just sort of passing time and he was going to lose anyways. And that just goes to show how, even if you're playing stronger opposition, you should really keep your head up and try to find all the chances you can. So bishop c5 here wasn't that hard, that difficult of a draw. Because bishop e7 instead, going for this faulty idea. I mean, I'm saying it's wrong for him, but I'm not gonna lie. When he played bishop e7, I almost jumped out of my chair. Like for a split second, I thought I was gonna lose, like on the spot. But no, because I can take on d6. So I guess his point is that he wanted to go for this, where he will promote the pawn, but I can just take here first, and now this is a pretty simple win. Just protect all the pawns. I mean, I'm up 2 pieces for the rook and an extra pawn as well, so he just resigned. What can I say? A very difficult game against an 1800, but we get the win, which is the most important thing. Now let's go on to the last game, which was played yesterday against Grandmaster Kevin Spraggett from Canada, a legendary Grandmaster who has played in the Candidates tournament in 80 something, 86 or 88. And I've also faced him a number of times. And I'm pretty sure all of our games, with no exception, have finished in a draw. So let's see if I can do something else in this one. I have the white pieces. I decided to go to play this sort of trendy line as well in the Night Art. The main line is g6, also the best move. But after some consideration, he went h6, presumably trying to avoid some heavily prepared lines by me. Okay, bishop e2 and bishop e3. Now, the reason, well, I decided to go for long castles and try to exploit this hook that he created on h6, right? This is stuff you teach like toddlers in chess. But it's funny how sometimes you have these very basic ideas about the position and they turn out to be completely false. So I just went for this plan, knight e4, and eventually takes an f4. But, I was already not feeling that comfortable. And then it came to reason that white is even slightly worse in the ensuing positions, which is just mind-blowing to me. Because black just played some flank pawns in the opening, just waited around. And the position is extremely similar to a rouser in the Sicilian. To a rouser Sicilian. But somehow the queen on d3 is also not that well placed. Okay, so I take and went f4. And at first I was, feeling that I could really apply some pressure. I find this setup for my pieces, and now I want to do this typical maneuver in the Richter rouser with knight e2 to d4. Problem is, after queen c7, I missed this extremely annoying and sort of random detail with queen b7. I mean, I had never really seen, let's say, this little maneuver be such an issue for white. And this is extremely annoying. I simply don't have time for knight d4 because he takes the pawn. I mean, it's not like I'm losing the pawn by force. I can defend it. But this is ridiculous because now, with this knight here, I cannot push g4 and start my attack. So if he just castles, he's completely safe, and he'll be the one to create problems on the queen side. And I was getting flustered at this point because look, I mean, he just played some random stuff in the opening. I wanted to try and punish him, and instead of that, I got a worse position out of the opening with white, and I couldn't for the life of me find any solutions to the position. Like, I couldn't find anything constructive to do. And it turns out that there kind of isn't. Black is just slightly better. Okay, I went rook e1, king b1. I was burning through all of my clock time, by the way. Bishop d4. Okay, the point of this move is that if b4, of course I cannot retreat because I dropped the pawn, but I want to go for some funkier ideas with knight d5. And this, I guess, should work. I haven't checked it with the engine. Yeah, bishop d8 still exists, but I thought I had some stuff going on with like knight e3 and maybe knight c4. I guess this is just false. Because he's got bishop b5. And then he takes here and on c2. But okay, at least I'm getting some sort of, creating some sort of havoc in the position. Instead he castles, which is the best move anyways. And here again, I thought for a bunch of time and decided to go for this, let's say, um, polemical decision of bishop takes f6. So the thing, I should have went for e5 probably. And this just actually goes to show, like, let's say, a shortcoming that I have in my chess understanding, which is that I'm usually a bit pessimistic about taking up positional, um, like, positional concessions in view of dynamic ones. Okay, this corporate chess jargon is just to say that white has this permanent weakness on e5, and black's structure is just better. And I'm banking on dynamic opportunities, like attacking opportunities with knight f6 or knight d6, and stuff like this. But in general, the positional considerations weigh more on me. So I decided to stay away from this and took an f6 with the idea of playing knight e2, not queen takes d6, which is just horrible because of b4. And usually taking this pawn leads nowhere, anyways. Knight e2 and knight d4. But this rook d8 move, which was a bit dubious, and he probably had better ways to try for an advantage. The main line I was considering is queen b6. So what I'm trying to do, by the way, is go knight d4 and at least take back one of the bishops. The bishop pair is just extremely strong in this position, especially this laser beam down the main diagonal. Queen b6 is what I was mostly considering. And I was thinking about going knight g3 here, because if knight d4, he drops back. And this type of thing, I mean, I wasn't really sure that this was equal. This is probably not equal because my knight is horrible. Instead, I was mostly considering knight g3 to go to h5 and create some play with f4 to f5. And computer is suggesting b4. Let me just take a brief look. And bishop c3. Wow. But even this, he says, is just great for black. This, f5, bishop a4. I mean, I feel like I'm creating some sort of counterplay here. Okay, again, rook c3, so I'm getting hit with tactics left and right. Yeah, yeah, the computer probably knows best. Instead he went rook f8, rook f d8, but this lets me out the hook tremendously because I swap back the the bishop, and now this important move, queen e3. This is actually really important because what I believe my opponent was banking on is that even these opposite colored bishop positions in this structure in the Sicilian can become quite dangerous since his attack is nothing to diminish, let's say. He's rolling the pawns down the board at some point, opening up this opening up my king's safety, and this can become quite dangerous quite fast. So this queen e3 move was the last important bit. He cannot avoid the queen exchange because I still have some ideas in the diagonal. So he traded, and luckily for me, we made a short draw. I offered a draw, and he accepted here on move 23, which actually got us into a bit of trouble with the arbiters because in this tournament there is the so-called Sofia rule, which is that you can only make a draw after move 30, but we completely forgot about it. So we had signed the score sheets and everything and put the pieces back in in the original squares. And then the arbiter said that just so you know, you cannot draw before move 30 and so on. But all was fine. So in general, just an annoying game. But okay, we defend and we get the draw, I guess. Not ideal, but could be worse. Today I'm playing another 2400 player from Peru, and we'll see how it goes. I'll see you soon with the recap of the remaining 2 rounds. So I'll see you soon. Peace out.